Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Opening statements are presented as a former Olympic athlete stands trial for attempted murder.
His choice to get a gun, a pink and black 9mm handgun, to point that gun at Lauren and pull the trigger twice, and then to turn it on Rob and pull the trigger again.
My client is not guilty. At the time of the shooting, my client feared for his life.
Plus, the state could soon rest its case as a former ICU doctor stands trial for patient murder. And a look behind the curtain into the alleged Sarah Lawrence college cult.
Please leave! I don't want to throw myself away because I love you and I want to stay with you always and forever.
But first, the slap scene around the world.
Uh-oh, Richard! Oh, wow!
Will comedian Chris Rock press charges against Will Smith? What happened at last weekend's Academy Awards? Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer. Terry Austin has the day off. Comedian Chris Rock will not press charges following an Academy Awards smackdown on Sunday when actor Will Smith slapped him across the face. This just moments after Rock made a joke at the expense of Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it, all right? That was a nice one, okay. I'm out here, uh-oh, Richard. Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith. Okay.
The slap aired live Sunday night during the 94th Annual Academy Awards. As Rock went to present an award, he made a joke about the 1997 movie G.I. Jane, in which actress Demi Moore sports a shaved head. He joked that actress Jada Pinkett Smith, the wife of Will Smith, would appear in the movie's sequel. After that, Smith walked onto the stage and slapped Chris Rock. Though producers cut the audio of the live broadcast, reporters in the room noted Smith yelled out at Rock to, quote, keep his wife's name out of your mouth. All this comes after Jada Pinkett Smith revealed to fans that she suffers from alopecia and now struggles to grow hair on her head. Less than an hour after the altercation, Smith delivered a tear-filled acceptance speech after winning the Best Actor Oscar for his work in the movie King Richard. The Los Angeles Police Department also released a statement saying it was aware of the incident at the Academy Awards, but that Rock has declined to file a police report. It goes on to say, quote, if the involved party desires a police report at a later date, LAPD will be available to complete an investigative report. The Academy says it will now launch a formal review into the slap. Joining us today is Law and Crime legal analyst Matthew Mangino and criminal defense attorney Julie Rendelman. Julie, does Chris Rock even need to press charges? Doesn't the video kind of say it all? And if he does or doesn't, are we going to expect these actors and actresses to get interviewed?
So technically, he doesn't need to be the one who pressed charges. I mean, keep in mind, when there's a homicide, you don't have that person pressing charges. It's the state of California that determines whether charges exist. With that said, there's no way in the world they're going forward with the case against Will Smith unless Chris Rock decides that he wants to do that. It is a battery. Everyone saw it. There's no question. I don't think anyone's going to need to be interviewed. I don't think Beyonce is going to be interviewed in terms of what she saw because we all saw it. But I don't think, based on the fact that Chris Rock seems to not want to go there, and keep in mind, he may say, by the way, this was just a joke. This wasn't real. There's no chance it's going forward.
All right, I'm glad you went there, Julie, because this leads me into Matthew's questions. There's still a debate as to whether or not this was staged or real. What do you think?
Well, there's a thin line between reality and make-believe, especially when you're in Hollywood. But it would be a stretch to think that Will Smith would want to have to generate some publicity when he's moments away from winning an Academy Award. So, yeah, I mean, the line has been blurred, and there's no question about that. But why would you stage something like this to generate publicity that might even overshadow the fact that you're going to win the Best Actor award? It doesn't add up.
Yeah, I mean, and it kind of has overshadowed his award because he did win an award today, but most people, including us, are talking about this slap. So we'll see how it plays out as this story unravels. Continuing on in celebrity news, actor Alec Baldwin returns back to work for the first time since the deadly shooting on the set of the ill-fated movie Rust. Filming for the movie Rust was halted last October as investigators began to piece together what happened to cause the death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins. As Law&Crime Daily reported, Baldwin was holding the weapon as it fired, killing Hutchins and injuring director Joel Souza. Since then, Baldwin has maintained he did not fire the weapon and is cooperating with the investigation. This comes as Hutchins' family files a wrongful death lawsuit against Baldwin, other producers, and crew members involved with the production. Attorneys for the Hutchins family say they expect the lawsuit to go to trial within the next 2 years. Still ahead on Law&Crime Daily, the state is expected to soon rest its case as one-time ICU doctor stands trial for murder. But first, another alleged cult member takes the stand in the Sarah Lawrence College cult federal trial. Welcome back. Another alleged victim takes the stand in the trial for accused Sarah Lawrence sex cult leader Lawrence Ray. Felicia Rosario and her siblings are 3 of the many alleged cult members Ray recruited from his daughter's group of college friends. Ray faces several federal charges, including racketeering, sex trafficking, and money laundering, all stemming from alleged crimes over the last decade. So far, the jury has heard from the prosecution's key witness, Claudia Drury, who testified of Ray's alleged abuse and manipulation. She claims Ray forced her into prostitution. Several court exhibits have been released sharing more insight as to what was going on inside the courtroom. One release over the weekend gives us a closer look at life inside the alleged cult.
Are you video recording this, Isabella? Can we go inside the house, please? Larry, come on. Come on, Larry.
Stop hurting me.
I'm not hurting you. Let's go inside the house.
You're pinching me. Stop.
Let's go inside the house, please.
Alicia, you're going to get hurt yourself.
Please, let's go inside the house. I want my phone. I want my life back together. Come on. Let's go inside the house.
Stop pinching me.
Let's go inside the house, Larry.
Stop.
Come
You're
on.
too aggressive and dangerous. Stop.
No, I'm not dangerous.
I'm afraid of you. Stop
You're
it.
not afraid of me. Let's go inside the house.
I'm now afraid of you.
Law&Crime's Adam Classfield is covering this case from inside the courtroom. He's heard firsthand the testimony of Lawrence Ray's alleged victims.
We are hearing from his third alleged victim. It's Felicia Rosario. The first alleged victim that we heard from was Santos Rosario. He was a Sarah Lawrence student, and Felicia Rosario is his sister. Now, she is not one of the witnesses to the sex trafficking count, but according to her testimony, she easily could have been because Larry Ray asked her to be an escort in order to pay back for her alleged offenses against him. She didn't do it, but her testimony eerily rhymes with that of Claudia Drury, who said that he would urge these students essentially to go farther and farther in what he sold as this journey of sexual liberation. It would eventually get more and more extreme until, in this case, he allegedly tried to pressure her into becoming an escort. We know that in the last alleged victim that we heard from, that actually happened. Here, it stopped short of just that.
Let's bring back criminal defense attorney Julie Renneman and legal analyst Matthew Mangino as we get a greater look into this college cult. Julie, gruesome details must be weighing heavily on the jury, but how does the government turn that into a guilty verdict here?
I think they've already turned it into a guilty verdict. I got to tell you, I think the evidence has been absolutely overwhelming. Remember, it's not the typical kind of evidence you hear, because anytime there's that cult-like behavior, there's manipulation, there's taking advantage of, specifically in this case, young women and men that sometimes are mentally vulnerable. And you're basically watching it happen. And I think there's no question that the prosecutor has weaved for the jury a clear understanding of the manipulation this defendant was able to take with each and every one of the individuals. I think the question is, what can the defense bounce back with other than questioning certain credibility of the witnesses, which I don't think is going to get them where they need to be in terms of an acquittal.
Yeah, I know it's a bad phrase to say, but a lot of defense attorneys will look at this trial and say, this just looks like a long plea deal. But Matthew, the more and more I hear about this college cult, the more I ask, where was the faculty and the people watching the dorms? Can the college be on the hook for what allegedly happened to these victims?
Well, that's a great question, Brian. And I think that certainly it's going to be tested. I have 2 children in college right now, and I'm astonished that something like this could happen at a college where an adult is basically in the dorm, cultivating students, manipulating students. How could this go on? How could it not be discovered? I think it's certainly something that's going to be scrutinized. It's something that's going to be tested. And ultimately, Sarah Lawrence College might find themselves on the other side of a lawsuit, and a successful lawsuit at that.
Especially as a lot of these videos come to light and everyone's kind of seeing how horrible this was. And if that does happen, of course, Law&Crime Daily will have you covered for those updates. And in Nevada, police say a suspect is now in custody in connection to the disappearance of 18-year-old Naomi Irion. But right now, Irion's whereabouts are still unknown. Investigators say a 41-year-old trolley driver was arrested on Friday. He's being charged with kidnapping after officials say he approached Irion's car in a Walmart parking lot outside of Reno, Nevada. They say he later drove off with Irion inside. Irion's vehicle was found abandoned near the same Walmart just days later. Police say Irion was active on social media leading up to her disappearance. Her family says she was waiting in the parking lot for a shuttle to her nearby job. If you have any information about Irion's disappearance, please call the number on your screen. Coming up on Law&Crime Daily, from the Olympics to attempted murder charges, we hear opening statements in the trial of Michael Barisone. Plus, after weeks of testimony, the state may soon rest its case in the trial of William Husel. Welcome back to Law&Crime Daily. The state is expected to rest soon in the case of Ohio versus William Husel, a former ICU physician on trial for the deaths of over a dozen patients. Prosecutors say Husel ordered excessive doses of fentanyl to patients, which led to their deaths. But his defense argues the former doctor was simply giving end-of-life comfort care. Jurors so far have heard from Husel's former co-workers and several family members of his alleged victims. Monday began the 6th week of trial, which started out with arguments between the prosecution and defense over a witness appearing to tamper with evidence while on the stand. Testimony then continued with a former Mount Carmel nurse and 2 alleged victims' family members. In fact, one patient's son was shocked to learn his father was on life support.
We were advised that he was in total organ failure, and that it sounded kind of crazy to us, but the life support meds were actually killing him, okay? Makes a lot of sense.
Was a decision made to withdraw care from your dad?
Yes.
Why did you all make the decision you did?
Well, we were told several times that they needed to do that if we didn't want him to be kept alive by life support. We asked, when was he suddenly on life support? We were just shocked that now he's on life support. We thought he was waiting on surgery.
Criminal defense attorney Julie Rendelman and legal analyst Matthew Mangino, let's bring them back in here so we can look back at the prosecution's case and ahead at what might be the defense's case. Julie, has the prosecution made the line between murder and comfort care far enough for a conviction, or do you think more is needed before the prosecution rests?
So it's a great question and an impossible question to answer. And the reason I say that, it's always interesting when you have, in this case, 14 victims, because inevitably you start to think, well, how can it be, how could it be a shock that if there's 14, there must be some basis for what happened? I think some of the jurors are going to sit there and say to themselves, would I ever put my family member in the care of this defendant? And if the answer is no, they have to ask themselves why. And if it's why because they believe beyond a reasonable doubt that his care went beyond care and went to murder, then he's guilty. The defense still has some room in there to bring out to the jury those things that question whether or not they've been able to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. But I think only time will tell in regards to that.
Yeah, and they don't need to prove it, but motive seems to be a big question mark in this case. Let's kind of talk about the defense, though, Matthew. Do you expect the defense to put on witnesses? Could even William Husel himself take the stand in his own defense?
Well, there are 6 weeks of the prosecution's case here. We've heard from witnesses, nurses, and doctors. We heard it from an expert for 3 days last week, as well as family members. So there's a lot of evidence out there. There's a lot for the jury to digest. I don't think this is the kind of case where the defense says, "Hey, the prosecution hasn't proved their case, and we're gonna arrest, and we don't have to do anything in this case." I think they do. I think they want some expert witness testimony. There's some controversy about who those witnesses might be, and we might very well hear from Dr. Husel because he can explain why he did what he did.
Yeah. Maybe he gives a non-criminal explanation. Maybe this is just about getting a second doctor's opinion, as so many people in this world do. So we'll see how this plays out. When we come back, the trial of a former Olympian. We head to New Jersey for opening statements in the attempted murder trial of Michael Barisone. Welcome back to Law&Crime Daily. Opening statements are presented in the case of Olympic athlete Michael Barisone, who faces 2 counts of attempted murder. All this stems from the 2019 shooting of Lauren Canarak, a tenant and dressage rider who worked with Barisone. Leading up to the shooting, Canarak and her boyfriend Robert Goodwin lived on Barisone's property. At the same time, Barisone was training Canarak in dressage riding. Before the shooting, a string of 911 calls were made by both parties. Barisone saying he tried to evict Canarak, and Canarak saying she was being harassed. Barisone was arrested after he shot Canarak in the chest and fired another shot at Goodwin. As Goodwin struggled with Barisone, Canarak called 911. She survived the shooting and is expected to testify. On Monday, prosecutors laid out the case to the jury.
When you go back to deliberate and when you're asked to return a verdict, it will not be about Lauren Canarak. It will not be about Rob Goodwin. It will not be about Mary Haskins. It will not be about any other person except this man. This man, the defendant, is the one on trial. So you may hear things that you don't like about Lauren or Rob or Mary Haskins or any of these other people. But saying nasty things, misbehaving, if you want to call it that, none of that is a justification to get shot. None of it creates a necessity for that person to be killed. No, we're here on this trial because of the defendant's choice on August 7th, 2019. His choice to get a gun, a pink and black 9mm handgun, to point that gun at Lauren and pull the trigger twice, and then to turn it on Rob and pull the trigger again.
During the defense's opening statement, Barisone himself broke down in tears.
It's a tragedy that Lauren Canarak was shot on that day. That said, there is another tragedy, a tragedy that will be played out in this courtroom. The tragic story of Michael Barisone, an Olympic athlete, a world-class dressage trainer, a man who on the outside appeared strong, confident, in total control. But what the evidence will show, a much different picture. A man who had a horrible childhood, was physically abused by his mother, sexually molested by a neighbor over and over and over again. A man who left home to get away from all of that and found solitude, security in the equestrian community.
Matthew, what was your reaction to seeing Barisone break down during his attorney's opening, and how do you think that will affect the jury?
I don't want to be necessarily cynical about it, but it seemed as though he started to break down on cue. On the one hand, he's an accomplished Olympic athlete and coach. On the other hand, he's an abused, downbeaten individual, and he seems to react to that teary-eyed. That I don't know. Will that have an impact on the jury? You always want to tug at the heartstrings of the jurors. Will that, in fact, be something that does impress them? Only time will tell.
Absolutely. Now, Julie, what do you make of these dueling 911 calls? How's a jury likely to interpret whether either side was actually in danger?
So it's always interesting to have one 911 call, let alone have multiple 911 calls from both sides. And I think when you have multiple 911 calls, particularly these, they do inure to the benefit, I think, of the defendant, because anytime there's a question, the jury has to say, you know what, beyond a reasonable doubt means that the people must prove the case, not the defense. And one of the things that sticks out in the 911 call to me is the desperation, whether it's true or not, of this defendant in terms of begging the police to get there, begging them to come to try to protect him and help him. And that may inure very well for him, particularly when the accusation is self-defense.
All right, we'll see how it plays out, and make sure to check out gavel to gavel coverage of this case with the Law&Crime Network. Well, thank you for joining us here on Law&Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.